Hi, good afternoon or good morning, good evening, depending on where it is that you're joining us from. And thank you for taking the time to be here with us today as we are going to discuss Google Sheets within Swydo, something that's become really popular over the last, I would say, year and a half or so. Something that should be very simple, but unfortunately could also get extremely complex because there is no set way for us to, or firstly, set out a table for this, because everyone's data that they are importing here is a different data set. You can have any data set from the amount of shoes that you've sold in an e-shop right through to the amount of calories that you consumed on your daily diet. It makes it very difficult to have a fixed setup for the way that you want to import this data. But for this, I've prepared quite a couple of different setups, data formats that we are going to, or data sets that we are going to import and show you how we can visualize this within Swydo today. If there is any questions whilst we are busy with the presentation, you can ask the questions. There will be people that will answer you directly. If we do not get back to you, then we will answer you probably a couple of minutes after the webinar has ended. Or alternatively, if you feel that the questions or issues that you're facing with the Google Sheets integration at the moment is maybe a little bit more complex than what we can solve within one of these questions and answers over the live chat, then please feel free to book a meeting with me as well so that we can help you with the Google Sheets setup. So what we are going to cover today, as I said, unfortunately, because this is really complex and no two data sets are alike, we are going to cover all the basics, all the do's and don'ts, all the things that you should really try and avoid, that would avoid you from making mistakes, that would then obviously avoid you from showing the data in the way that you want to within the Swydo report itself. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Werner and I'll be doing the presentation today. Here's some of the things that we are going to talk to you about today. Why Google Sheets? We're going to look at some of the best practices. Going to give you some of the tips that makes it easier for you to visualize the data within Swydo. And also, if you've got custom data, what I mean with custom data, some of the data that you're not tracking from anywhere, maybe some data that you put in by hand and that you want to bring into your Swydo report as well. We are going to show you how to best put that into a sheet to then visually be represented within the Swydo report itself. Then why Google Sheets? Some of the most common use cases for this, as we said, it's for unavailable integrations. I think that's the one that we mostly deal with. Offsite data, what we mean by offsite data is, for example, if you've got a client that's got an e-store, but they also have a location store where they do a point of sales, and you want to add some of this point of sales data and add that to the data that you are tracking for his e-store, whether it's through Shopify or wherever it might be that you're tracking that, you can bring that point of sale data in with a Google Sheet as well. Then when preparing the sheet, this is really, really important. And I think this is where 90% of the issues that we face within the Swydo report can get solved, is if the setup and the preparation of the sheet is done properly. There's I'll go over these with you in some practical examples as we look at the sheets, and then bring them into the Swydo report itself, of what we need to do and what we shouldn't do, what we should try and avoid. The most important one of those would obviously be to ensure that the formatting is done correctly. That's first and foremost. What I mean with formatting is, I'll get to that in a moment. I'll show you practically how that's done. But what I mean with the formatting is every bit of quantitative data that we want to display within Swydo. And when I mean quantitative data, it's anything with a number. Qualitative data would be data that has place names, campaign names, things like that. It's not that important for that. But any quantitative data, anything that has a number linked to it, we need to format, whether that is in a currency, in a percentage, or just as a normal numerical number. All of that needs to be done, and that is extremely important when we are preparing a sheet to import into Swydo. Another thing I would say, the second most important thing that we need to look at is always, well, I'm saying always, but try and keep your dates. When I say date, let's say, for instance, we are tracking a data set for every day of the month over a month period, for example. always have your dates going from top to bottom in a column format. Do not put them in a cell from left to right. It can still work if you're going to put it in from left to right, but it just makes it so much more complex. As we get to the practical example of this, it'll make more sense. I'll show you how it should be done, or what the optimal way of preparing this would be. So without further ado then, and before I forget that, keep it simple. That's always the best idea. It doesn't need to be very complex to be able to display the right data. And also it doesn't need to be complex within the sheet to really add some nice visuals. In other words, what I mean with that is to put it into a graph or a chart. It doesn't need to be complex within that. The system does all the hard work for you as long as the preparation and the formatting is done properly. So let me then go to the presentation itself. Let me share my screen with you. Oh, my apologies for that. Let me try that again. And there we go. Okay, so you can see my Swydo test account here. I'm going to use one of these today to illustrate the Google Sheets data coming in. So the first thing that we'd want to do is to obviously create a connection between Swydo and the Google Sheet to be able to import the data from the Google Sheet. That we will do exactly the same way as we would make connections to any of the other integrations that we've got, with one small difference that I'll get to in the end. If we go to settings and we go to connections, can add new connection and Google Sheets. I'll say connect to Google Sheet. Will ask me to give my permission for the data to be exported from the Google Sheet into Swydo, and I'll obviously allow that. Then I'll get the choice here to have a shared or a private connection. Now, exactly the same as it is with any of the other integrations, but obviously with Sheets, it's maybe a bit more important than what it is with some of the other integrations, because with Sheets, depending on your setup, there could be some of your personal data as well. So with Sheets, it's probably one of the only times that I would probably suggest that you make a private connection instead of a shared connection. We have done some things as well to prevent that from happening. That's why the setup is slightly different in comparison to some of the other integrations. So let's just make a private connection for now. And we can save the connection. Can see that the connection has been made, and here we can see that this is a private connection and not a shared connection. Just to sort of recap, what that means is these shared connections, anybody that is part of my team can come in and use the data that is available on these connections with the underlying data sources. But for the connection that I now have with Google Sheets, I will be the only person that could access the underlying sheets within the connection to Google Sheets. So with that, if we go to my Google Sheets example client and we start a new blank report. As I said earlier, unfortunately, there is no template set up for Google Sheets. This is simply because there are so many different data sets to bring in. There's no standard way of doing this. Whereas with Google Analytics, for example, or Google Ads, Facebook Ads, there is a set template that we can structure, which includes some of the most important data sets within Google Ads and within Facebook Ads, which is a good place for you to start, and then just go and delete what you don't want, add what you do want, or that you felt was missing. But unfortunately, because of the vast amounts of different data sets and setups that you can have, as you will see when we go to the sheet itself, it is virtually impossible for us to create a template for this. So if we go then and start with a blank report, we create the report. Now, before we bring any of these in, let's have a look at the sheet and let's have a look at some of the different ways that we can have setups that we want to bring into Swydo itself. So the first set of data that we're looking at is, firstly, let's start with the date. this is daily data over a period of 3 months. And for that 3-month period, we've got a couple of metrics that we are tracking on a daily basis. Second one that we've got is more general data. And you'll see here is also no date range. So this is just a general set of data for different campaigns that I had running. This could be either for a day, a month, a week. And I've got some general data that falls in line with each of the different campaigns. Then got some data from a normal bakery. This would now fall into the category of an online store or a point of sale data that I've got that I want to incorporate with my e-store data. And then the fourth sheet, and this is quite important, what I have got here, let's just get rid of this for a second. What I've got here is also data, and the data has also got a date tied to it. But this, you will notice, in comparison to sheet 1, the date range here, or the is daily intervals that I am recording the date on, whereas with this one, it's got one data point per month. So, which makes it quite different to the data set here, where I've got data for every single day. So what we're going to try and do here is, if we have to chart this, for example, to get an idea of what my total sales were on a monthly basis for the last couple of years or year and a half, we are going to try and do the same chart within Swydo to display the same data set that we've got visible here. But before we get to that, let's get to the first sheet and let's have a look and see what I mean with the formatting. So when we look at formatting, if we click on column A and we go to format, the first column is a date. It needs to be formatted then as, if we go to number, go to date. It's already been formatted as date. You'll see within the Google Sheet that this setup, depending on where it is in the world that you come from, but for everyone, this does not look correct. So it's month, day, year. If you format it, the system will automatically, if you had it the other way around, if you had a day, month, year, and you format it, the system will sort this out. The second column obviously is a currency. So we'll go format, number, and we will go to currency, which it's already been set on. And so on and so forth. As you'll notice in the sheet, I've got dollars here and I've got pounds here. So obviously I can fix this now within the sheet, but I want to show you how it is possible to change this within Swydo as well. So we're going to fix this currency within Swydo. We can obviously fix it within the sheet, but I just want to show you that it is also possible to fix that within the Swydo report. So one thing to take note of before we start with the report is this data set is from July till end of September. So if we then go back to the Swydo report, let's say we want to have a look at this sheet and we want to just add some KPIs first. We want to add the ad spend and then the revenue as a normal metric, a KPI for the month of July. Go back to the Swydo report, click on the plus sign, widget and KPI, and now we need to go and select the data source. So we'll go to add data source, select the integration, which is Google Sheet. That is my connection. If we choose Sheet, for those of you that have been using Swydo for quite a while, you will notice that this now looks slightly different. I don't have to go search for it. The webinar one is on top. But one thing to take note of, this sheet is called webinar. See, and I'm now adding the webinar one, but I've got 4 different tabs here. So if I select webinar now, it will then ask me to select the tab. So we're going to start with sheet number 1, and we're going to save that. Then we said we want to see the revenue and the ad spend for the month of July. So first thing, select the ad spend, and we'll add that as a KPI. obviously now we'll have a 0 value as our date range still reflects the last 30 days. So we can go and change the date range. To July. And what will happen is we will automatically sum all of the values that is on the sheet from the 1st to the 31st. These will all be added together and auto summed and displayed as a KPI or as a single metric. If we then want to also go and select the sheet, and then we want to add the revenue, we can then bring in the revenue as well. So if we then go back to one of the sheets that doesn't have a date column, where we just have a random data set for these 5 different campaigns that we're running, we want to bring that table into Swydo. Now we want to display the table that shows you the different campaigns, the ad spend, the revenue, the orders, and let's say the average order value for all of these in a table. How would we do that? So let's go back to the Swydo report. We click on one of the blue plus signs here. We select widget and KPI. But now we've got webinar sheet 1. Unfortunately, if we are dealing with different sheets, we need to now go and add the data source again. Google Sheets, mine, and I will choose webinar and sheet number 2. Now I'm going to select general reporting. So what I'm doing now is I'm building out my widget from scratch, so to speak. There's 5 stages as we go through this. The first one is the data source. I've already selected that, so I wouldn't have to select it again. The second one is presentation. What do we want this to look like within the Swydo report? So let's keep it at a table for now. Then we get to the most important screen, which is your dimensions and metrics. So my dimensions, what am I breaking the data down by? Said we want to break this down by campaign. And the metrics that we want to select, we said was the ad spent, average order value, and let's say the revenue. If we save this, we will see the table with all the different campaign names, the ad spend, the average order value, and the revenue. So if we then go back to the sheet and we look at the 4th sheet, we have a slightly different set of data. It has got a date linked to it, but it's only 1 data point per month. We said we are going to try and replicate this graph, this line chart within Swydo itself. So what we'll do here is first look at the formatting. If this is random data and it's not been placed in proper order yet, what you can do then as well is we'll select column A. We can go to data, short range, go to advanced range sorting options, click and sort, and this will sort it for you in the correct order. In other words, what this does, it picks up on January 2021 and it sorts it all the way to December 2023. Then if we go back to Swydo now, we can then say add KPI and widget. Once again, unfortunately, we'll just have to go and select the correct sheet. So repeat that process again. Webinar, select, and then we are dealing with sheet 4. We'll select general reporting. And then let's say we want to put in the spiral chart. Then dimensions and metrics. I want to have my dimension as month. And then obviously there's only one metric for me to select, and that is the total sales. If I save that, Okay. There's going to be an error in this. And I wonder if you picked up on that. And that's once again with the date range. So what we will do with this data set here, we can either just have no date range and it will work, or we'll have to set it back to the same date range as correlates with the sheet itself. So here's a couple of examples of how the data can be displayed within Swydo itself. Then there's one thing we want to go back on, and that was, if we go back to sheet number 1, we said we want to have a look at how the different data, or the data that is different when it comes to pounds and dollars, can be fixed within Swydo. And one extra one that I want to touch on a lot, because I feel that is a question that we really get a lot from people that do use the Google Sheets integration. Now, if we don't do anything about it and we display data like this, for example, for the whole month of July, we will automatically go and auto sum that data. So you had different data points here for the ad spend. We basically went and we added all of these and we came to this answer. And this is what we are displaying for the date range, or for the range of the 1st of July till the 31st of July. But not all of the data that we want to display here will have to be auto-summed. For example, if we're looking at ROAS, we want to get an average here. These are obviously weighted. So if we want to get the average, for example, between these two, that's almost at a ratio of 2 to 1. Let's call it a ratio of 2 to 1. So if we want to work out an average here, we are going to have to go 14.71. Let's pretend that this is exactly a ratio of 2 to 1. Then to work out the average ROAS for these two lines, we would then have to say 14.71 plus 14.71 plus 6.4 divided by 3. So in other words, we can't just say 14.71 plus 6.73. Otherwise, our ROAS is just going to get higher and higher and higher and higher, which is not correct. We need to work out the average here. So how we will sort that problem out, or fix that problem, if we go back here and we select widget, and let's say, for example, we go back to sheet 1 and we are selecting ROAS. So for now, it's going to auto sum it and give you a massive amount. It's going to look fantastic, the greatest marketeer in the history of the world. But to show this properly, what we will do is click on the range, go to metric, go to custom metrics. And within the custom metrics, every sheet, the sheet that we are working on, everything that's imported from that sheet will already be there. The system would have already sorted this. And if we go here, we will see the aggregation here is set to sum. We will have to change that aggregation to average. If we then close this, we will now see that the correct ROAS is displaying of 13.39. Then to get to the cost per sale that is currently displaying in pounds, if we go back here and we say we want to add widget and KPI, we select sheet 1 and we select the cost per sale. If we save that, we will see that the cost per sale is displaying in pounds, which is obviously the incorrect currency for this report. So once again, we can click on settings, go to metric, go to custom metric, and we can make the change within Swydo itself. So cost per sale, we currently have currency as Great British Pounds. We can just go in here and change the currency to US dollars. It's default on top. If we close this, and we'll see that the currency has been changed to dollars as well. So what I'm trying to touch on with that is you can fix a problem that you've got either in the sheet or within Swydo itself. as long as the sheets are linked. So after this, if we want to then share this with a client or share this with everyone, it's exactly the same as what it would be with any of the other Swydo reports. We can either create a dashboard link for this, or what we can do is we can schedule this to be sent out to whoever will be the recipient of the report itself. So that's pretty much all that we've got time for today. I know that this was fairly basic. It wasn't extremely complex. Like I said in the beginning, if there are things that you're struggling with that is a bit more complex than this, please feel free to book a meeting with me. But I really hope that I answered some of the common issues that people run into when you deal with Google Sheets. I think the most important thing to bear in mind is the formatting. Get your formatting correct, and that will already solve a lot of issues for you. The other thing that's really, really important is when you have a date range or a date tied with the data, please arrange that in a column from top to bottom. Like I said, you can have it working from left to right, but it just makes it so much more complex for you to do anything with it. When I say do anything with it, I mean visualize it. If you want to visualize that in tables or in charts or graphs, it just makes it a complete nightmare. So thank you very much for your time. I hope that we can answer all of the questions that you've got, that you maybe asked us within the live chat now. We will stay online for a couple more minutes to answer some of the questions that you do have. Alternatively, like I said, please feel free to book a meeting with me if there is more complex things that you are struggling or trying to get in and display within Swydo via Google Sheet. Well, thank you very much for your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.